Hello everyone, this is Darian of GNB Productions, and today we'll be taking a look at Netflix's Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is a loose adaptation of the Scott Pilgrim vs. the World series of graphic novels. The story centers around Scott Pilgrim, once finding the literal girl of his dreams, finds that he has to defeat a league of her 7 evil exes in order to be with her. I've been a fan of Scott Pilgrim for a few short years now. I first watched the movie directed by Edgar Wright during quarantine because, like everybody else, I was stuck inside and didn't have shit to do. I fell in love with the characters, the writing, the over-the-top action sequences almost immediately. So when I heard that we'd be getting a Netflix anime adaptation that's seemingly going to be sticking closer to the events of the novel, I was hyped. But that's not exactly what we got. Yeah, from the marketing, you'd be led to believe that this is going to be a straight up near faithful adaptation of the novel's events, and that's really not the case. I feel the need to say that if you plan on watching this show, it would be most favorable to at least watch the movie beforehand. Because while I think what the base show has is amazing, I don't think you'll be able to fully appreciate what this show has to offer if you're not at least somewhat familiar with how the story normally plays out. People are inevitably going to be upset at the direction this show takes because of the misleading marketing, but I think for me that worked better in its favor. Because if you go in expecting a near one-to-one adaptation and witness all the stuff they change, it makes for a great experience, I'd say. Anyway, enough beating around it. Let's actually get into it. The story of this series basically serves as an alternate timeline to the events of the Scott Pilgrim vs. the World story, with the first episode giving us the general bits of what people may expect, introducing Scott and his friends, him going to the party and meeting Ramona, getting introduced to the first of the exes, etc. The key difference being where Scott was supposed to win the fight with the first evil ex, Matthew Patel, he miraculously loses and dies. Now, I, like many others, thought this was just an act, and waited for them to pull the rug from under us and get back to the shit we all know. But that never happens. Scott Pilgrim loses that first fight, and we run with it as we follow the other characters in Scott's life, who get way more focus in this than he does. Now, in part, I'm mixed on a little bit of the stuff they attempt here, but largely, I love this direction. I know folks aren't going to be a fan of this, but I love it for a multitude of reasons. First of which being, I love when adaptations have the balls to go all out and do their own thing, and that's very much what this is. Its own thing. It's literally called Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, as it goes off on a different path than what those who read the novels or watch the movies will expect. This new take allowed us to dive into characters that, as far as the movie goes, because at the time of me recording this I have yet to read the novels, don't get time to shine as much. And the ways they still tie in the old Scott Pilgrim story is cool as fuck. It ain't perfect by any means, but it's still cool as hell. The bulk of this show, funny enough, is focused on Ramona Flowers. Once she realizes that Scott wasn't killed but instead kidnapped, she roams around Toronto trying to find him. We go through this journey with her as it shines a light on her problematic past with a few of her exes, and even how in the end she learns not to run away from her relationship with Scott, like she did with the others in the past, giving her some pretty cool growth throughout the season. It's all interesting as shit, but something a lot of folks will be confused by is the severe lack of Scott Pilgrim himself. The dude is in a total of 3 episodes in an 8-episode season. While I like the different directions we take, I am a little disappointed we didn't get to see much of Scott's story arc in this show. In general, they really skip over a lot of the problematic sides of his character, like his relationship with Knives barely being focused upon, for example. They kind of just breeze past all of that. Scott is the one that's supposed to go through the character growth, and while I love everything they did with Ramona, Scott himself, unfortunately, feels like kind of an afterthought in comparison. That's not to say it was all bad, because everything dealing with future Scott trying to stop Scott from being with Ramona because she breaks his heart in the future is cool as all living hell. And I love how the finale still hinges on Scott himself being the most self-destructive person at the end of the day, but I just don't find it to be as earned. because Scott as a character just isn't focused upon that much. Every single character in this is fucking phenomenal. Glad to see the cute and witty writing style of the series has been carried over brilliantly. On top of diving into Ramona's past in interesting ways, we explore a fuck ton of new shit with the other major supporting cast members. I have to preface again that I haven't read the novels yet, so if a lot of this stuff was done there, I have no idea. Regardless, I loved everyone. Young Neil becoming a film writer was hilarious as shit. Everything Wallace. Not just a specific thing, I just adore Wallace as a character throughout this entire thing. Steven and Knives working on music together was cute as hell. And everything, and I mean everything having to do with the exes was literally perfect. Matthew Patel is already a pretty eccentric character, but seeing him take over Gideon Graves' empire for a brief period and that kick-ass fight between the two was kinda fucking cool. The show doesn't shine too much of a light on how manipulative and downright diabolical Gideon normally is, other than just giving it a passing mention, and that's something I'm not particularly fond of. That said, him becoming a washed up loser for a bit was entertaining, and him getting together with Julie was interesting as hell. I just love how much of a fucking hater she is. Seeing her reaction to Scott's quote unquote death was hilarious as hell. The twins, unfortunately, really don't get that much time to shine, but the two that I believe were handled the best were Roxy and Lucas Lee. The over the top nature of the two was consistently entertaining, but the background they each shared with Ramona, both walking out on him and where they ended up because of it, was also interesting as hell. This show was also just funny as all living hell, man. Envy Adams pulling up to Scott's funeral just for the sake of singing and making it all about her. The onset affair with Wallace and Todd fucking killed me, as well as Wallace coming for all of his stunt doubles. Scott, when first meeting Ramona, and the first thing he brings up is Sonic the fucking Hedgehog. I saw too many Sonic fans quick to say that they were just like Scott in that moment, and I was unfortunately one of them. The style of writing and humor is just something I couldn't get enough of. I don't think I can properly talk about it without just recommending checking it out for yourself. It's so much fucking fun. The soundtrack for this show is great, and I don't just mean the different songs they used. There are a few covers of songs I love and adore, like the version of Remember You Envy Adams sung at Scott's funeral. They thankfully blessed us with snippets of Black Sheep from the movie, and you can't imagine how I screamed at the top of my fucking lungs as soon as I heard it. But on top of that, I also mean the crazy and hectic video gamey tracks that play during some of the action scenes, the sort of lo-fi and chill music that plays during some of the calmer moments, some of the songs that Scott's band performs, and especially the whole anime opening that I didn't dare skip a single time, and neither should you. It's just so freaking good, man. I love how every single cast member who was a part of the movie made it in to voice their respective characters. While it is nice to have these guys on, I think it highlights a particular issue I have with certain celebrities doing voice work. Some of them just ain't too good at it. Now, nobody in this show is particularly bad. Just some line deliveries are a little flat here and there. Some of the line reads don't particularly match what the character is doing, and it kind of just takes me out of it some of the time. Michael Cera sounded so weird as Scott in a few points. Apparently, he's done voice work in the past. Last time I checked, I haven't seen any of the stuff he's done voice work for, but here, he just sounded a bit off in a few places. Chris Evans was phenomenal as Lucas Lee. Aubrey Plaza was outstanding as Julie Powers. Mary Elizabeth Winstead was pretty good as Ramona Flowers. I think she suffered the same problem as Sarah, where some of the line delivery is a tad flat, but largely she was pretty good. The entire cast as a whole just did a phenomenal job. Now, for the absolutely phenomenal animation and art style. Clearly, it carries on the art style of the graphic novel almost perfectly, but with a brilliantly exaggerated comic booky and video gamey aesthetic. It literally looks perfect, and the action sequences are even better. The way they handle the squash and stretch, the different camera movements, the absolutely incredible choreography, it's all just to die for. The world of Scott Pilgrim just perfectly lends itself to animation. Overall, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is fantastic. It's an amazingly creative spin and new direction for the story that brilliantly allows itself the freedom to flesh out the large cast of characters more. as well as explore new types of relationships and dynamics amongst them, and giving them more depth to the X's was an incredible addition. It's not perfect by any means, as the title character himself barely has any proper dedicated time to his character arc, but with everything we got as a result, I can't help but not mind it for the most part. The soundtrack is great, the writing is great, the characters are great, and the animation and fight scenes are fucking phenomenal. This may not have been the one-to-one adaptation some of us were hoping for, even though that would have been amazing. But for what it is, it's still an incredible ride from beginning to end, and I can't wait to see where it goes next for a potential season 2. So, if you agree or disagree with anything I've said in this video, let me know right down there in the comments below. Also, be sure to like and subscribe. This is Darion of GNB Productions, and take care.